On the 5th of September, 1969, a strange event occurred in the remote Siberian village of Rusty, Tisulsky district, as if taken from the pages of a science fiction novel. It is still unclear how to explain this because an ancient sarcophagus was found at a depth of 70 meters, which, according to the most conservative estimates, may be several thousand years old. It all happened deep below the surface of the earth, in the dimly lit tunnels of a coal mine. Every day, miners mined coal at this depth, but amid the rhythmic clang of metal on stone, one miner's pickaxe hit something unexpectedly empty. The sound was clearly different from what they were used to. After a pause, the miner wiped his face and, with a mixture of curiosity and caution, removed the debris, opening a crack in the wall, which turned out to lead into darkness beyond. And with a few more skillful blows, the rock collapsed, and the miners stood in awe when they saw what was in front of them. They found themselves in a secret room untouched by light for thousands of years. Inside, the air was filled with mystery, and their lamps cast a long shadow over a sight that would forever remain in their memory. They saw a large marble sarcophagus of exquisite design with a length of about 2.5 meters and almost a meter in height. And as it turns out later, what the miners found in this room is found all over the world, but carefully hidden from people. That's exactly what today's video is about. After this discovery, the head of the mining district, Alexander Masilygin, immediately received a stunning message from one of his miners. Realizing the potential significance of the find, Masilygin immediately notified the Soviet authorities, initiating a series of events that led to widespread speculation and intrigue. This discovery quickly became the focus of the miners' attention, caused by a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Masilygin ordered to remove the sarcophagus from its burial place at a depth of 70 meters. And this task was completed very quickly. When the sarcophagus was brought to the surface, the imagination of the miners was played out with visions of gold and jewels that could be inside. However, at the same time, they were a little indignant, discussing that Soviet officials would most likely confiscate the find, without giving them anything in return and without even telling them what was inside. Driven by curiosity, they decided to open the sarcophagus. At the beginning, they tried to open the lid, but they couldn't. After a while, they managed to do it. In the sarcophagus lay a woman of about 30 with a scythe and blue eyes. She was lying as if she was asleep. Her long wavy dark brown hair didn't fall to her waist. She was wearing a white dress, strangely translucent, apparently made of a fabric unknown to us. She was surrounded by a mysterious pink liquid, and next to her head was a small black metal box, unlike anything the miners knew at that time. However, many years later, with the invention and development of smartphones, witnesses of the event compared this black box next to a woman with a phone. The woman's skin was surprisingly smooth and clean, with no signs of decomposition or age. Her skin was incredibly white, whiter than that of a person with albinism. She looked livelier and healthier even than the miners themselves. The sarcophagus stood open for many hours, and almost all the villagers came to see it. One reckless young man, driven by curiosity, decided to impress the people gathered around, and dipped his finger into the pink substance, tasting it. It turned out to be completely tasteless and odorless. However, with a sad combination of circumstances, just a week later, his mental state deteriorated sharply. His disorientation became so severe that he could not recognize his own home. He eventually froze to death on the street. His death will not be the only one connected with the mysterious discovery. The beauty lying in the excavated sarcophagus soon became known as the Tisul Princess. Tisul. This is the name of the area where she was found. In the end, high-ranking officials of the district, as well as the police, firefighters, and the military arrived at the scene. They were accompanied by plainclothes KGB officers who arrived by helicopter. They immediately cleared the area around the sarcophagus, warning the gathered crowd about the potential danger of infection. Their goal was to move the sarcophagus in their helicopter somewhere where it could be analyzed. However, attempts to lift the sarcophagus through the air were in vain because it was too heavy. The pink liquid was decided to be drained into special containers that will be transported separately, which will facilitate the sarcophagus. When they did, something amazing happened. As soon as the pink liquid was pumped out, the perfectly preserved and living body of the woman underwent an amazing transformation. The skin in front of the audience changed from white to black in a matter of minutes, as a result of which the princess lost her former appearance. This led many to believe that the pink liquid and the sarcophagus itself had some preservative properties, capable of maintaining her body in a state of suspended animation. In the end, the Tisul princess was transported to Novosibirsk for scientific analysis. A few weeks later, a professor from Novosibirsk came to Rzhavchik to give a lecture about an unusual find in the mine. He said that the state of preservation of the princess is unlike anything that has previously been encountered in the field of archaeology or paleontology. The liquid in which it was immersed had properties that defied explanation and had no known analogues in natural or artificial embalming processes. Attempts to understand the age and origin of the sarcophagus and the girl led to an extensive series of tests, including radiocarbon dating and other analytical methods. However, radiocarbon dating is not the most reliable way to determine the age of organic materials. The structure of the sarcophagus, the preserving liquid, and the princess herself did not correspond to the expected parameters. The scientists turned to other methods, analyzing geological layers and applying more sophisticated dating methods that could hint at the age of the sarcophagus. The conclusions drawn as a result of this analysis were truly revolutionary. We are talking about many thousands of years. This figure shocked the scientific community and challenged the very foundations of human history. If the results were accurate, they implied the existence of a civilization capable of creating a sarcophagus and preserving liquid. The consequences were serious and involved not only rewriting the entire history, but also a complete revision of the timeline itself. The discovery of the Tisul princess opened a Pandora's box of questions, theories, and conclusions. The story began to spread, and an article about the find appeared in the local newspaper. However, this caused a quick and secretive reaction of the Soviet special services. KGB agents came back ridiculing this story as meaningless, suggesting that there was no such thing, and no such discovery existed at all. Agents also began confiscating all copies of the newspaper with the article. A professor who shared information with the people and a newspaper editor were punished for daring to comment on events that the Soviet government tried to hide from the world. It was the peak of the Cold War. No one else dared to talk about the Tisul princess until the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was then that freedom of speech was established, and another article appeared covering this discovery. The article was written in the year 2002 and was called A Woman Who is 800 Million Years Old. She appeared in the newspaper Caucasia and then in the newspaper Archaeum. The journalist claimed that this story was told to him by a retired KGB colonel who worked in the past in one of the secret departments of this organization. The story has regained popularity. Currently, a stone with a memorial plaque is installed near the village of Rzhavchik, not far from the place where the sarcophagus was found. This was even talked about on Central Television, where eyewitnesses from the village of Rzhavchik, who saw the opening of the sarcophagus with their own eyes, confirmed the authenticity of the find. But there was something else in this story. Later it turned out that years after the discovery of the Tisul princess, a series of extraordinary deaths occurred among those who were associated with the sarcophagus. Just 6 months after the KGB confiscated the stone sarcophagus, the tragedy affected many, starting with Ivan Karnaukov, the man who discovered the sarcophagus of the Tisul princess. His life was cut short in a terrible accident when his motorcycle collided with a truck. A month after Ivan's death, a miner drowned. The only survivor of these ominous events was Vladimir Podreshetnikov, who reported that the discovery of the Tisul princess was not the only one of its kind. In the summer of 1973, military forces again flooded the Tisul district. The troops established a strict perimeter around the forest, forbidding access to local residents and patrolling the streets of the village. The presence of the military was shrouded in secrecy, and the villagers were advised to keep their composure without any explanation. Years later, the testimony of Vladimir Podreshetnikov was confirmed by Valery Malovany, a historian of the Special Services, a retired FS Major General. He stated that the archival records of the KGB indicate that in 1973, this area was cordoned off by an intensive security cordon. Not far from here on the lake, there was supposedly an island on which additional graves were discovered. Then the situation becomes even more strange because on the website of the US State Department, in the section of the Freedom of Information Act, we find an email requesting documents concerning the Gilgamesh resurrection chamber, the location of his body, and the body of the buried Nephilim. Why did the US State Department's emails include messages related to Gilgamesh's resurrection and the location of the buried Nephilim? What will happen after the alleged discovery of the ancient tombs becomes known? The discovery of the ancient city of Uruk sheds new light on the historical context of the legendary Sumerian king and his burial. Gilgamesh is one of the most revered figures in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, and he is considered the fifth king of Uruk. In many legends and epics in which he appears, he is considered a demigod or a god-king. It was also believed that Gilgamesh allegedly played the role of judge of the dead in the underworld. He is also called the Lord of Animals. Its history and folklore associated with it have been passed down from generation to generation, is the subject of many literary works and archaeological discoveries. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was imprinted on clay tablets with inscriptions, it is described that he was buried under the Urat River in the border built when the waters of the river parted after his death. The epic is an epic poem from Mesopotamia, and it is one of the oldest literary works. The tablets and records date back to the 2100th year BC. The location of the grave was discovered by a German expedition, which revealed oddities in the soil of that area. In this way, they created a magnetogram, which was then digitally mapped to obtain a detailed structure of the area. This technology allowed them to cover more than 100 hectares, and to their great surprise, they found cavities resembling an ancient city, and with such accuracy as it was described in the epic Gilgamesh. In addition, they found a developed canal system that makes the city look like a water oasis of the desert, indicating a highly developed civilization. In an area not far from the city, in the bed of the former Euphrates River, we found the remains of a building that can be interpreted as a funerary. At this stage, I don't want to say for sure that this is the tomb of King Gilgamesh, but the similarity with what is described in the epic is striking. In fact, the end of Gilgamesh's days is very well described in the Sumerian work, The Death of Gilgamesh. Although this episode occurs in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it is not always included in modern translations. The poem describes the death and burial of the heroic ruler of Uruk. In Sumerian tradition, Gilgamesh was considered the true king. It is believed that he was supposedly born from the divine mother Ninsun and the mortal father Lugalgang. The narrative of Gilgamesh's death begins with the hero lying in bed, terminally ill. In a dream, his fate is revealed. He has reached the end of his appointed time on Earth, and will allegedly become the master of the underworld. After Gilgamesh's death, the text proceeds to describe his burial, which may refer to the tombs of Ur. The text continues with the same brief descriptions of offerings made to about 20 deities and several types of priests, all of whom are now dead. Undoubtedly, at that time, archaeologists were convinced that this revolutionary discovery would reveal long-forgotten secrets and radically change our understanding of history. However, someone had other plans. Just a few weeks after the discovery of the tomb of Gilgamesh, the United States launched an invasion of Iraq. This forces Fassbinder and his dedicated team to hastily abandon their research and evacuate back to Germany, leaving the mysterious secrets of their discovery shrouded in darkness. Since then, No one has ever explored this area, at least officially. However, it turns out that this is not entirely true. The emails of the US State Department are published under the Freedom of Information Act. Here is a screenshot of an email from the State Department, approving a request for documents related to the Gilgamesh Resurrection Chamber and the location of the buried Nephilim, that is, antediluvian giants of tall stature. Moreover, this information has been circulating freely on the internet not so long ago, and it is not clear whether the request was fulfilled. It is assumed that the Nephilim mentioned in the request actually means the descendants of fallen angels and humans. The existence of the email has not been confirmed by reputable sources, and we have to inform you that it is not clear whether it is genuine or it is some kind of hacker scam. On the other hand, why do this and what is the reason? However, the fact is that as of today, an email requesting documents about the Gilgamesh Resurrection Chamber and the location of the Nephilim is still on page 470 under the number F 2019-02110 in the magazine FOVI. Before making any conclusions, let's try to figure out who owns the email for this request. So here we have Dinetra de Siniger. She is listed as the applicant for the request on the State Department documents website. When we check this name on the internet, thousands of people appear, and there is no way to get meaningful information about this person. It could be an alias used by someone else. There has also been speculation that the email may be a kind of rebus, a riddle, in which Gilgamesh may have been used as a code name for something else. It is unclear what the buried Nephilim could refer to, and it is unlikely that a message with such a title would be used to conceal a code name that attracts so much attention in itself. Several ancient texts, and in particular the Book of Enoch, mention a group of fallen angels who rebelled against God, and subsequently they decided to create offspring with the daughters of men on earth, which led to the birth of giants. In the Book of Genesis, they are described as strong, glorious people from ancient times. Perhaps one of the craziest ideas you can come across today is that the government is trying to clone these children of fallen angels. Naturally, this is not based on any reliable scientific or religious theory, and is not supported by any specific facts. But even this version has a right to exist. But there is another strange circumstance that you just need to pay attention to. At the turn of the 2008-2009 year, a curious video appears on the internet. On it we observe a man lying in a sarcophagus, in full entourage of ancient Mesopotamy. Does this have to do with finding the tomb of Gilgamesh in Iraq? A question that we have yet to answer. But nevertheless, to date, no one has officially explained the origin of this video. There is no smoke without fire, and considering who is trying to control events in the world, it is possible that this letter and the plans that have been announced may be quite true. After all, very often we are faced with the fact that the truth turns out to be much more interesting and incredible than the wildest assumptions and fantastic hypotheses.